There's a reason true strength feels like isolation. The man who begins to rise above others doesn't simply lose company. He's abandoned by the world he outgrew. Nietzsche understood this in a way few ever have. He saw that the moment a man stops conforming to the small comforts of the herd turns on him. They call him arrogant, cold, impossible to understand. But in truth, they fear him, because his strength reminds them of their weakness. Real strength isn't loud. It doesn't demand validation. It exists in silence, in the decision to walk alone when everyone else kneels together. The world worships false strength, men who seek approval, who bend to opinion, who call compromise wisdom. But Nietzsche saw that such men are not strong. They're just tolerated. The truly strong man doesn't need to be tolerated. He endures being hated, misunderstood, and forgotten, because his truth means more to him than acceptance ever could. To Nietzsche, this loneliness was not a punishment. It was proof. Proof that you've left the common path and begun the climb toward becoming something higher. Every step upward narrows the trail. Every insight cuts away another layer of belonging, until at last the strong man looks around and realizes no one is beside him. And that is the price of power. To stand at the summit, surrounded not by applause, but by silence.
Nietzsche's life was a paradox in motion, a man who saw too deeply into the nature of existence and paid for it with his sanity. He lived in near isolation, walking alone through the mountains of Switzerland, plagued by illness, migraines, and loneliness. Yet from that solitude, he birthed ideas so dangerous that even today people whisper his name with caution. Nietzsche was not merely a philosopher. He was a surgeon of the human soul, cutting open the illusions we build to protect ourselves from reality. He believed that strength, true strength, is not born from comfort, acceptance, or belonging. It is born from confrontation, from standing face to face with chaos and refusing to look away. The reason strength feels lonely, Nietzsche would say, is because most people are not willing to go where strength is forged. In his eyes, humanity was trapped in what he called the herd. The herd represents the collective comfort of the mediocre, those who conform, obey, and seek approval. They crave safety, not truth. They choose belonging over authenticity. And Nietzsche saw this as the greatest tragedy of mankind, that people would rather be accepted in a lie than be isolated in truth. To him, every man faces a choice. You can live like a member of the herd, tamed, predictable, harmless, or you can step out into the wild of your own becoming. But that second path, the path of the Übermensch, the higher man, the self-overcomer, demands solitude. It requires walking through deserts where no one follows, because what you're chasing is not external validation, but inner transformation. Nietzsche understood this from experience. His ideas were ridiculed, his books ignored, his reputation destroyed. He had no wife, no close friends, no comfort, but he also had something far rarer, the clarity of a man who has nothing left to lose but the truth itself. He once wrote, "I am not a man, I am dynamite." And that was not arrogance, it was a recognition of his fate. Dynamite destroys before it transforms. And every man who seeks real power must go through destruction first, the death of comfort, of illusions, of weakness. Nietzsche's central message can be summed up in one brutal paradox. To become truly strong, you must first endure being completely alone.
Think about it. Real strength doesn't emerge when you're surrounded by support. It emerges when there's no one to rescue you. No reassurance, no validation. Only you, staring into the abyss, forced to decide who you will be when everything collapses. He wrote that one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. This chaos, this inner storm, is the birthplace of greatness. But most people flee from it. They distract themselves, numb themselves, fill every silence with noise, because silence makes them confront who they really are. Nietzsche didn't run. He entered the storm willingly. His philosophy was a rebellion against the moral systems that keep men docile: Christianity, comfort culture, moral conformity. He saw them as tranquilizers for the human spirit, keeping men weak, dependent, and afraid of their own instincts. To Nietzsche, these systems were not guides to virtue, they were cages. And if you want to rise beyond them, you must break the bars yourself. That's why he said, God is dead, not as blasphemy, but as liberation, the declaration that man must stop kneeling and start creating his own values. That right there is why real strength feels lonely. Because once you stop worshiping what everyone else worships, success, approval, virtue, you become a threat. You disturb the collective dream. You expose the weakness that others are desperate to hide, and they will not thank you for it. They will isolate you for it. But Nietzsche would tell you that's the price of evolution. The higher man must be willing to live without the herd, without applause, without sympathy. His reward is not comfort, but clarity. The moment you begin to see the world for what it is, not what you wish it to be, you cross a line most never return from. The illusions fall away, and you see how fragile people's convictions really are, how dependent they are on groupthink, how terrified they are of silence. Nietzsche knew that enlightenment was not peace, it was fire. It burns through everything false until only essence remains. And that process, by nature, is isolating. When you start thinking for yourself, when you stop craving validation, you begin to see how most of society runs on mutual delusion. People don't want to be free. They want to feel safe. They want comfort over truth, pleasure over purpose, conformity over creation. So what happens to the man who refuses this? He becomes an exile in his own world. The stronger he grows, the fewer people he can relate to. His mind operates on a different frequency. What others call arrogance, he knows is simply independence. What others call coldness, he knows is clarity. Because when you detach from illusion, you start loving differently, thinking differently, living differently. Nietzsche called this detachment amor fati, the love of fate. It means accepting everything, suffering, rejection, isolation, as necessary steps in your evolution. To love your fate is to stop wishing for ease and start embracing the weight that makes you stronger. It's the discipline of saying, let it all come. I will not break. This is what separates the strong from the weak. The weak curse their suffering. The strong transform it. The weak run from solitude. The strong use it. The weak seek understanding. The strong seek mastery. Nietzsche didn't just theorize this. He lived it. Alone in a small room in Turin, he wrote until his mind gave out. His final years were spent in madness, but his legacy became immortal.
because he understood something most people never will, that loneliness is not the enemy. It's the crucible where power is born. Strength feels lonely because few people are willing to face themselves honestly. Few are willing to endure the silence long enough to hear their true voice. But Nietzsche's message was never despair. It was a challenge. Can you stand alone and still love life? Can you face the chaos within you and not look away? Can you carry the burden of your becoming without begging for relief? Because if you can, you'll experience something sacred, the rare, terrifying, liberating joy of being completely your own man. That's the essence of Nietzsche's truth. Real strength is not loud. It's not about dominance or arrogance. It's about facing everything you fear, including your own emptiness, and still choosing to rise.
Nietzsche's message wasn't meant to live in dusty philosophy books. It was a warning aimed at the modern man, the one drowning in comfort, validation, and distraction. He would look at today's world and see the perfect manifestation of the herd mentality he feared. A world where people outsource their thinking to trends, their emotions to social media, and their sense of worth to external approval. If Nietzsche were alive today, he would say that most men have forgotten how to suffer, and that's precisely why they've forgotten how to grow. The modern man avoids pain like it's poison. He numbs it with entertainment, with endless scrolling, with meaningless relationships. But Nietzsche would argue that pain is the forge of transformation. Without it, you remain soft, untested, unformed. You see it everywhere. Men who mistake approval for love, validation for strength, attention for purpose. They fear being alone, not realizing that solitude is the only place where they can meet their real selves. Nietzsche would call this avoidance a sickness, a spiritual decay. When you're constantly seeking comfort, you lose the ability to confront yourself. And without that confrontation, you never evolve. Look at relationships today. So many men bend themselves into shapes to be liked, to be chosen, to be loved. They suppress their fire to appear gentle, their ambition to seem agreeable, their independence to avoid rejection. But Nietzsche would have torn this illusion apart. He would say, love does not consist in possession, but in strength. A man who has not found his own foundation will always crumble in the presence of another. That's why Nietzsche's strongman, his Übermensch, doesn't seek love as escape. He approaches it as a test. Can I remain myself even when I love? Can I give without losing my center? Can I face rejection and not fall apart? That's the kind of strength that both attracts and terrifies. Because real strength has gravity. It pulls people in, but it also exposes them. Women, Nietzsche might say, do not fear intelligent or strong men because of dominance. They fear what that strength reveals, the fragility of comfort. A truly strong man mirrors back a woman's own depths, her own potential for truth, and that can be unsettling. Most relationships fail, not because of lack of love, but because one person begins to evolve while the other clings to comfort. Real love, in Nietzsche's world, is not a hiding place. It's a battlefield of souls, striving toward truth. In society, this principle plays out even louder. Nietzsche saw modern culture as a machine that rewards conformity. Look at how it operates today. Mediocrity is celebrated. Excellence is envied. Truth is softened. We've built systems that punish individuality because individuality threatens the illusion of equality. Nietzsche would call this slave morality, the morality of the weak disguised as virtue. It's when people elevate submission, pity, and mediocrity as moral ideals,
not because they are noble, but because they fear the powerful. The modern world praises humility, but not the humility of wisdom, the humility of fear. We teach men to apologize for their strength, to dim their ambition, to seek approval for being non-threatening. But Nietzsche would whisper, "Beware the virtue that comes from weakness." Because real virtue, courage, resilience, self-mastery, requires confrontation, not compliance. This is why strong men feel alienated in today's culture. When you refuse to bow, when you refuse to numb yourself, you become a problem. Your existence challenges the collective illusion. You remind people that life is not meant to be painless. It's meant to be overcome. That every man must slay his inner comfort to rise beyond mediocrity. Nietzsche would look at the endless self-help noise of the modern era and smirk, because everyone is chasing motivation while avoiding suffering. Everyone wants transformation without crucifixion. But Nietzsche's truth is merciless. Become who you are. That means confronting your own abyss, not outsourcing your healing, not pretending your pain isn't yours to bear. When Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how," he was giving you the blueprint. You can endure anything, rejection, failure, loneliness, if you have a reason deep enough. The problem today is that most men don't have a why. They have dopamine, they have distractions, they have shallow pleasures that crumble at the first sign of pain. Strength in Nietzsche's sense isn't the ability to dominate others, it's the ability to endure yourself. To look at your failures without self-pity, to sit in silence without needing validation, to walk alone without losing direction. Imagine this in the context of your own life. When was the last time you sat alone, truly alone, without your phone, without noise, without distraction? Did you feel peace or panic? Most people panic because silence strips away their masks. But Nietzsche would say, "Good, now the real work begins." He believed that only through solitude can a man refine his values. The crowd gives you morality, but solitude gives you truth. The crowd teaches you to seek happiness. Solitude teaches you meaning. The crowd praises comfort. Solitude shows you who you are when comfort dies. That's why Nietzsche's path feels lonely, not because it's meant to isolate you forever, but because it breaks your dependence on false belonging. Once you face the silence, once you've learned to stand without applause, you stop needing permission to exist. You stop begging life to be kind. You begin to create your own meaning. And that is the birth of power. Look around. How many men today are spiritually broken because they have never built something on their own soul? Their opinions come from algorithms, their desires from advertisements, their identity from others' approval. Nietzsche would call them hollow, not evil, just untested. The real man, he'd say, is the one who builds meaning from chaos, who doesn't wait for permission, who accepts suffering as part of his craftsmanship. Because every great man, every thinker, every builder of history, from warriors to artists, had to walk through that same darkness. Nietzsche's message isn't to reject the world, but to transcend it, to take the very forces that make life unbearable, loneliness, doubt, fear, and turn them into fuel for creation. The strong man transforms pain into insight, isolation into focus, struggle into strength. The world tells you to avoid pain, Nietzsche tells you to use it. The world says fit in, Nietzsche says stand apart. The world says seek love to be whole, Nietzsche says be whole first, then love. That's the test. Can you remain yourself in a world that constantly tries to pull you into the herd? Can you endure being misunderstood without bitterness? Can you bear the loneliness that comes from seeing deeper than others? and not lose compassion for them? This is where Nietzsche's teaching hits hardest. The path to strength is not glamorous. It is quiet, often unseen. It's the moment you wake up before dawn and sit with your doubts. The moment you choose discipline over pleasure. The moment you keep going when no one's watching. The moment you stop waiting to be saved and realize you never needed saving in the first place. Strength in Nietzsche's sense isn't the ability to dominate others, it's the ability to endure yourself, to look at your failures without self-pity, to sit in silence without needing validation, to walk alone without losing direction. Imagine in the context of your own life, when was the last time you sat alone, truly alone, without your phone, without noise, without distraction? Did you feel peace or panic? Most people panic because silence strips away their masks. But Nietzsche would say, good, now the real work begins. He believed that only through solitude can a man refine his values. The crowd gives you morality, but solitude gives you truth. The crowd teaches you to seek happiness. Solitude teaches you meaning. The crowd praises comfort. Solitude shows you who you are when comfort dies. That's why Nietzsche's path feels lonely, not because it's meant to isolate you forever, but because it breaks your dependence on false belonging. Once you face the silence, once you've learned to stand without applause, you stop needing permission to exist. You stop begging life to be kind. You begin to create your own meaning, and that is the birth of power. Look around. How many men today are spiritually broken because they have never built something on their own soul? Their opinions come from algorithms, their desires from advertisements, their identity from others' approval.
Nietzsche would call them hollow, not evil, just untested. The real man, he'd say, is the one who builds meaning from chaos, who doesn't wait for permission, who accepts suffering as part of his craftsmanship. Because every great man, every thinker, every builder of history, from warriors to artists, had to walk through that same darkness. Nietzsche's message isn't to reject the world, but to transcend it, to take the very forces that make life unbearable, loneliness, doubt, fear, and turn them into fuel for creation. The strong man transforms pain into insight, isolation into focus, struggle into strength. The modern world tells you to avoid pain. Nietzsche tells you to use it. The world says fit in. Nietzsche says stand apart. The world says seek love to be whole. Nietzsche says be whole first, then love. That's the test. Can you remain yourself in a world that constantly tries to pull you into the herd? Can you endure being misunderstood without bitterness? Can you bear the loneliness that comes from seeing deeper than others and not lose compassion for them? This is where Nietzsche's teaching hits hardest. The path to strength is not glamorous. It is quiet, often unseen. It's the moment you wake up before dawn and sit with your doubts. The moment you choose discipline over pleasure. The moment you keep going when no one's watching. The moment you stop waiting to be saved and realize you never needed saving in the first place. Real strength will always feel lonely because the higher you rise, the fewer can breathe that air with you. But it's also the only path that leads to authenticity. When you stand alone long enough, you stop pretending. You start to see life as it is, raw, tragic, magnificent. And in that brutal clarity, you find something holy. Not happiness, not comfort, but freedom. That's Nietzsche's vision, the man who walks through his own fire and on the other side emerges unburned, unbowed, and unbroken.
If you were to distill Nietzsche's philosophy into lessons for life, they would not come as gentle advice. They would strike like commandments carved into stone. Because Nietzsche didn't want to comfort men, he wanted to awaken them. He believed the only way to live with strength was to face the truth without anesthesia, to accept suffering, solitude, and struggle as the price of greatness. The first lesson is this: do not seek peace, seek power. Most men spend their lives chasing comfort, confusing it for happiness. But Nietzsche knew peace without power is simply sedation. When you numb pain, you numb potential. Every time you choose the easy path, you trade away a piece of yourself. True strength begins when you stop asking life to be gentle. The man who learns to endure, not escape, becomes untouchable. Pain loses its teeth when you stop running from it. The second lesson: stand apart, even if it breaks you. Nietzsche believed that individuality is forged in resistance. To follow your own path means walking into misunderstanding, envy, and ridicule. The herd will try to shame you back into obedience because your defiance exposes their submission. But that isolation you feel, that tension between belonging and becoming, that's the signal you're alive. Most men never experience it because they never dare to think for themselves. The third lesson: never beg for respect. Take it through presence. Respect cannot be asked for. It's commanded through the quiet force of self-mastery. The man who controls himself controls perception. Nietzsche would say that strength is not about dominance, but direction. The ability to stay composed when others are falling apart. Respect flows naturally to the man who no longer chases it, because to chase is to confess weakness. Fourth, turn pain into transformation. Nietzsche wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." That chaos, the heartbreak, the loss, the failure, is not your enemy. It's the raw material of your evolution. Every great man, every artist, every thinker he admired was shaped by pain. Suffering is the sculptor of the soul, but only if you face it consciously. When you deny your wounds, they fester. When you embrace them, they forge wisdom. Fifth, reject the morality of the weak. Nietzsche despised what he called slave morality, the tendency to glorify weakness, submission, and self-pity as virtue. Modern society teaches men to apologize for their ambition, to suppress their hunger, to celebrate fragility. But Nietzsche would tell you that this is a trap. Compassion is noble, but only when born from strength, not from fear. Do not shrink to make others comfortable. Do not confuse guilt with goodness. You owe the world your strength, not your surrender. Sixth, be ruthless with your excuses. Most men live as prisoners of their own rationalizations. They justify inaction. They glorify mediocrity. They make peace with stagnation. But Nietzsche would say, become hard. Not cruel, hard. Firm enough to face your failures without denial. Honest enough to see where you've betrayed your own potential. Every excuse is a chain that binds you to the ordinary. Break one every day. Seventh, do not chase love. Embody power, and it will come. Love, for Nietzsche, was never meant to be a form of dependency. It was meant to be a meeting of two complete forces, two souls who chose to grow together, not hide in each other's shadow. If you make love your purpose, you will lose yourself. But if you make power your foundation, strength, clarity, direction, love becomes a natural extension. Women are drawn to strength not because it dominates, but because it stabilizes. Weak men drain. Strong men elevate.
Eighth, accept that loneliness is not a curse, it's the initiation. Every man who rises to something greater must pass through the desert of isolation. The silence you fear is the same silence that reveals your true voice. In solitude, you meet the man beneath the masks. That encounter is brutal, but sacred, because when you stop fearing loneliness, the world loses its hold on you. You become internally sovereign, untouchable. Ninth, live dangerously. Nietzsche said, "Build your cities on the slopes of Vesuvius," meaning stop trying to eliminate risk from life. Greatness is born in tension. If everything feels safe, you're stagnating. Challenge must become your ally. Seek discomfort. Confront what terrifies you. Live close to the edge, not recklessly, but purposefully, because danger sharpens awareness, comfort dulls it. And finally, the 10th lesson, create your own meaning. Nietzsche's ultimate message was that God is dead, not as blasphemy, but as liberation. It meant that the external sources of meaning we once relied on, religion, society, authority, no longer hold the same power. The modern man must become his own creator of value. You must decide what your suffering means. You must define what success, love, and freedom mean for you. Because without your own meaning, life becomes unbearable. With it, everything becomes fuel. Each of these lessons burns with one central truth. You cannot be free without strength. Freedom is not given, it is earned through discipline, solitude, and suffering. The man who learns to endure life's brutality without collapsing into bitterness becomes something rare, a soul forged in fire. Nietzsche's wisdom was not meant to make life easier, but to make men stronger, to remind you that the path of the strong will always be steep, silent, and lonely, but that is the only path worth walking. When you look at your struggles, your rejection, your heartbreak, your isolation, don't curse them. They are your training ground. Every hardship is a hidden demand from life. Rise higher. And when you begin to live that way, when you no longer seek validation, when you no longer need applause, you will start to understand what Nietzsche meant by the overman. The man who is not ruled by fear, not softened by comfort, and not broken by solitude. The man who has become his own meaning.
Nietzsche once said, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." That is the price of real strength. You will be misunderstood by the very people you once sought to impress. The more you evolve, the lonelier your path becomes, not because you are unloved, but because few can breathe the air at your altitude. The truth is, most people do not want freedom. They want comfort dressed as happiness. They want safety disguised as peace. But you, if you've listened this far, you are not like most people. You are one of the few who feel the quiet pull towards something higher. You know there is more to you than the roles you play, more than the world's approval, more than what they tell you to want. You can feel it, that haunting tension between who you are and who you could be. Nietzsche's philosophy is not easy medicine. It does not soothe, it burns. It asks you to die before you live, to let the old obedient version of yourself collapse so that something stronger can emerge. To walk into solitude not as punishment but as purification. To see every wound, every rejection, every sleepless night as sacred preparation. Because in the end, that's what real strength is. It's not arrogance. It's not dominance. It's the quiet resolve to carry the weight of existence without breaking.
It's the ability to stand alone in a world built on dependency and say, I am enough. You will lose people on this path. You will outgrow their conversations, their desires, their fears. You will begin to see how deeply asleep the world truly is. But if you stay true to this inner ascent, if you refuse to descend just to be understood, you will find something far greater than belonging. You will find peace born from power. Nietzsche's warning still echoes across centuries. Beware the comfort that weakens you. Beware the virtue that tames you. Beware the love that makes you small. Because everything that demands your obedience is secretly afraid of your potential. And perhaps that is the final truth. Real strength will always feel lonely because it is rare. You are not meant to be understood by everyone. You are meant to be unshakable, unbroken, unafraid of your own becoming. So let them call you distant. Let them call you difficult. Let them say you've changed, because you have. You've seen through the illusion. You've heard the call that most men will spend their entire lives trying to silence. And when you walk alone, when the noise fades and the world grows quiet, remember Nietzsche's lesson. The man who stands alone stands nearest to the gods. That loneliness you feel, it's not emptiness, it's ascension.